Good evening, good evening. Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. It's Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. I'm so glad you all have the opportunity to join me for another fabulous show. I've been on a little bit of a hiatus for the past few weeks. I wanted to give myself a mental health break from doing my show and from doing my broadcast. So I took a few weeks off. I've been busy with my internship at the MedStar Good Samaritan Hospital under the house call program, as you all may know. So that's winding down. We've now entered August, and I've spent the majority of my summer just learning a lot from the experience as a summer intern as I prepare for my graduate program and as I prepare to pursue my master's soon. Once the fall ends, I am definitely preparing for that transition, and so many amazing things have been happening. So for the month of August, I have a few events that I'll be attending, but I just wanted to let you all know that I just took a few weeks off because I think that everybody needs a mental health break from everything that they do. They invest their time, their money, and even their energy into. So I do appreciate you all for understanding that. So I've been just posting reruns of some of my previous shows and broadcasts that I've done recently. So I hope you guys had a chance to go back and really look and listen to that. But as I was saying, I have a few events that are coming up for the month of August. So next week on August 10th, I will be attending the second annual networking event that is going to be facilitated by Civic Works, which is the organization that I am participating in the internship under. So they have a summer experience in aging closing ceremony that's taking place at the Clifton Mansion on 2701 St. Lo Drive from 5 to 7 p.m. next week on August 10th, 2022. And that's a ceremony that I'll be attending with some of the other interns that participated in the program throughout the course of the summer, getting experience and knowledge in the field of aging. So as I prepare for my master's program, as I prepare to start my master's program, I wanted to have this experience under this program to learn more about gerontology. In other words, the aging population. So I've been able to learn a lot about that. And I've been able to network up with a lot of people at MedStar Health and under the House Call program. And I've been able to really expand my knowledge during time under the program in the healthcare industry. So I'm very thankful and blessed to have had that experience. So that's coming to a close. The last day is on the 16th of this month, but the ceremony is taking place on the 10th of August next week on Wednesday at the St. Lo Drive, 2701 St. Lo Drive at the Clifton Mansion of Civic Works. So I'm excited to attend that and meet with so many amazing people who work in the field of aging. So I'm thankful for that. I'm also going to be attending the Newsom Gospel Music Awards, the 27th, excuse me, annual Newsom Gospel Music Awards on Saturday, August 20th from 7 to 10 p.m. at Martin's West in Gwinoka, Maryland. So I'm very excited about that. I have another book that's up for nomination. So I received the nomination for Male Author of the Year for my third installment of my book series, The Beauty in Us, Our Souls in Armor, which was released on my dad's birthday, May 2nd last year. So I'm very thankful about that. I'll have an opportunity to meet more amazing people in the gospel music industry and who are in the field of entertainment in general. This is my third year coming to the show. In 2020, it didn't take place because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but this is my third time attending the show, and each experience has been great. So again, that's going to be held on August 20th, on Saturday, August 20th, from 7 to 10 p.m. at Martin's West. I'm very excited about that. I thank Dr. Fred Newsom for everything that he's done and for supporting me in the work that I do. And I support him and all of the other people in his network in the same regard. Everyone who supports my work and who understand my vision and my dream. We support each other. This community of people supports each other. And it's one of the biggest shows in Baltimore, one of the most popular shows in the city of Baltimore. So I'm very thankful for that. And I will also be attending, there's also an event it's going to be held on August 21st, Sunday, August 21st. I still have to get in touch with him, but Mr. David Marshall with Journey to Josiah. He has an event that's supposed to take place on August 21st. And the event, let's see, just to make sure I'm right. Okay, so the event, it's called the Back to School Family Fun and Fitness with Journey to Josiah. So I'm going to get in touch with him about that. I would like to participate in that too. I know the kids are going back to school soon, so this will be a great way to get back into the swing of things. I know that summer unfortunately is almost over, but we've all had a chance to really, I hope you all have had the chance to really enjoy our time this summer. It's been a great summer. I think that a lot of people had a chance to travel more and to spend more time with their families. And I think that a lot of people were waiting to, go and travel and go where they wanted to go and be with who they wanted to be with. The pandemic has had us under a lockdown for a while, but it didn't stop us. So I'm thankful that everyone has had an opportunity to take advantage of the summer, enjoy this warm weather, enjoy the atmosphere. I hope you all are feeling good and looking good too. So I'm very thankful about that. So our guest this evening, he's supposed to hop on in about 10 minutes, is Mr. Jordan Davis, a public speaker, motivational speaker, Mr. Jordan Davis. Now, Mr. Jordan has appeared on our show, on this show before, and he's talked to us about the work that he does as a motivational speaker. But you all, if just in case you all don't remember, I shared with you all, Mr. Jordan Davis and I grew up in school together. We attended the same elementary, middle school. And so we've known each other for a very long time, and we've had the privilege and honor of watching each other grow, as young adults. And we are going to be having a conversation this evening about what we discussed last time. And this broadcast is called The Beauty in Us Radio, The Beauty in Becoming a Man. So we're going to have that discussion this evening in about 8 to 9 minutes when he hops on, so that we can talk about that again. This is going to be like a part 2 from our discussion last time. So we are going to definitely dive deep into that discussion. So Mr. Jordan, just in case you all don't remember, Mr. Jordan Davis is a professional public speaker on inclusive education, effective communication strategies, and youth empowerment and well-being. So right now, he serves as the project coordinator for the Center in New Designs and Learning and Scholarship at Georgetown University. And he organizes efforts to infuse topics of well-being into college course curricula. So what that essentially means is that as he's studying for his master's program on a part-time basis, he's working as a project coordinator behind the scenes in the classroom for the students at Georgetown University. So the last time we spoke to Mr. Jordan, he was attending McDaniel College, and he was pursuing communications. So he's since graduated. He's since gotten his undergraduate degree, his bachelor's degree in that area of expertise, but now he's studying for his master's program. And as I prepare for my master's program, and as I study for applied sociology with both certificate programs in the nonprofit sector and in applied research methods, he is going to be in the classroom working on a full-time basis as a project coordinator for Georgetown. So again, both of us have had the opportunity to grow together and learn together. So when we talk about the subject of becoming a man, we are going to be very open and transparent about many of our struggles in terms of us getting to where we want to be, building our careers, establishing our foundations, building our legacies, which is essentially one of the most important topics for this evening. I have a list of questions and I have a list of things that I do want to share and that I do want to ask him. And again, this is going to be a really riveting discussion about manhood and about boyhood and all of the above. So I hope you all have an opportunity to really sit back and enjoy the show. And if you did not get a chance to watch our last show, you can definitely look that up in all of the social media platforms that are available. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. It's on there. So the last broadcast was called Black Boy Psychology with Mr. Jordan Davis. But this broadcast, again, is called The Beauty in Us Radio, The Beauty in Becoming a Man. So I hope you all enjoy it. So when we think about manhood, or when we think about what it means to become a man as you grow and as you mature, we have to think about what that really means. So I know that there are a lot of stigmas that surround the meaning of the meaning of manhood, what it means to actually be a man, or what it means to identify as a boy first. I think that oftentimes, um, when we are going through different phases of our lives, and by we, I mean little boys growing into young men, sometimes it can be very challenging to jump through all of the hurdles and hoops that are in our way, and that we um, we sometimes have a very difficult time with our growing pains. A lot of us have insecurities that we sometimes carry with us as we grow older and as we mature. But sometimes we're not always given the strategies, the healthy coping strategies to really navigate through all of those hurdles in an effective way. So I think that when we talk about this conversation about what it means to become a man, or and what it means to actually have an experience with being a boy first and growing into a man, I think that that has many facets. So when Mr. Jordan and I, when we talk about that, I encourage you all to really think, even ladies, I encourage you all to think about the men in your lives, your dads, your brothers, your godfathers, your uncles, um, your cousins, male cousins. I want you all to really think about your relationships with them. I think that sometimes we have a very hard time, and by we again, I mean young men. As boys, we have a very hard time really getting in touch with who we are and um, what we're representing. I always say, and I've said it on my show before, that I think that growing into a man and going from boyhood to manhood is all about, that transition is all about what you value. It's about your foundation. It's about the legacy that you are trying to establish, not just for yourself, but also for your family. I think that it's important to stand on purpose. I think that it's important to stand on faith. And I think it's important to demonstrate that perseverance and that resilience. I also think that it's important for every man to understand what his strengths and what his are, because we all have them. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. But I think that again, that makes up who we are. And I think that if you are in a position to cope with all of the obstacles that are in your way, if you're able to demonstrate that resilience and that perseverance, and if you're able to move forward in a healthy manner, if you're able to establish healthy relationships with people, if you're able to establish boundaries with people to let them know what is and is not acceptable in your space and on your path, I think that you're on the right track. So I think that it's important for us to understand that, because what I've learned so far as a young adult and as a young man is that it's important for me to not only stay the course and not only focus on my dream, my standards, my expectations, but it's also important for me to establish boundaries. It's also important for me to have healthy relationships, but again, establish boundaries, and to, again, have healthy strategies so that I can cope with all of the obstacles that are in my way. Um, as I shared with you all before, self esteem is something that every man struggles with, whether they're willing to accept that or not. And self love, self esteem, self image, that's what I like to talk about from a male's point of view. And to be quite honest, from um, not only a man's point of view, but for young men and boys who look like me, I think that's very, very important for us to be comfortable with who we are, and to be confident about our abilities and about um, what we stand for, what we stand on, as men and as boys growing into men. So I think, and again, it's all about that foundation, taking the strengths and the weaknesses that you have, that make up who you are, and representing that in the best way possible, not just for you, but for your family. So I think that again, that's very important. Um, I've I- I've had a conversation with a couple of my peers recently about some of the struggles that I've been able to overcome, some of the problems, some of the personal demons that I've been able to overcome. Um, and I talked to them about some of my insecurities that I still have and that I still struggle with. But since he's here, I'm going to introduce you all to Mr. Jordan Davis. Mr. Jordan, thanks again for appearing on my show, agreeing to appear for the second time. I know that it's been a while since we've talked, but I know a lot has changed But we've still been following each other, and we've still been growing, and we've still been on this journey of self-development, and we are still staying the course. So thanks again for agreeing to appear on my show to talk about a very important topic. So we talked about this last time, so I consider this to be kind of like a part two. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself for the new listeners? Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you do and how you got to where you are now?
Absolutely, Nelson. First and foremost, thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a familiar space. And it feels really good to be in a space that I've already been in previously. And I talk about a topic that's so important. And fortunately, I've been able to, kind of contribute to the destigmatizing of mental health and things like that that kind of contribute to the dismantling of toxic masculinity, which we'll talk to in just a bit. But yeah, a lot has changed for me since the last time that we've talked. And for those who aren't familiar with me, as Nelson said, my name is Jordan Davis. I was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. That's a huge part of my identity. I'm currently in the DMV, currently in Virginia, specifically Arlington, Virginia. So I'm about 5 minutes from the Pentagon, so kind of in the middle of things, right across the bridge from DC, and that's kind of where I call home as of right now. And I'm a son to two amazing parents. I'm in a very happy, committed relationship with my girlfriend, Lauren, for the past 3.5 years. And a lot of the work that I do now is focused within education, specifically higher education. So whether I'm going into classrooms or speaking to entire student bodies as a professional public speaker under the brand name JD Speaks, or whether I'm in my project coordinator role at Georgetown University, working in the realm of faculty development in our teaching and learning center, I feel very connected to making higher education more affordable, making it less racist, a more inclusive environment, and also making it something that's very transformative and meaningful for those who go into it, and having it be something that's not just a credential, having it not be something that students are looking at the end of it, right? Like trying to get the degree, but it's more about the experience that you go through in the process of getting that degree. So that's what I'm all about, and hopefully that's a good enough overview to kind of get us started in today's conversation.
Yes, it is. Thanks again for sharing. So, what made you decide to want to be a public speaker? I know that you talked about your role as a motivational speaker, and you talked about your role as a project coordinator, and those go hand in hand with the work that you do and with who you're trying to inspire and who's who's who follows your work. I know that you have a pretty good following. You have a lot of your following consists of a lot of young people, a lot of young adults. So I think that's fantastic. So how do you merge the role as a project coordinator and as a public speaker, and what led you to wanting to do this? As a profession, as an occupation.
It's a great question, Nelson. So my public speaking journey is short, but it's a long story of kind of how I got to where I am. So I'll try to make a long story short, try to make it concise for you in the audience. So in high school, I was actually a competitive public speaker. I didn't get that opportunity until one of my business teachers in high school. I was taking business classes, taking economics classes, kind of business marketing, things of that nature. They had that at my public high school that I attended, and people kind of recognized that I was a good presenter, a speaker, and they also knew that I was growing even more and more passionate about issues within education. Is just kind of something that I focused my research projects on in high school and things of that nature. So I was presented with the opportunity to present at a business conference where I competed against others who competed in business themed events. And I did really well in that competition. I went to the national competition and had a lot of public speaking exposure there. And when I got to McDaniel College, which is my alma mater, just graduated from McDaniel in 2021, that is really the place where I perfected my message, or really tried to develop my message. So I knew that I had the speaking skills from a communication standpoint, but what was the substance behind the words that I was speaking at the time? And I felt as though my experience as a student was very telling in that. So In high school, I was a C and D student. I was able to transform into an A and B student by the time I graduated. And then all throughout McDaniel College, I was a Dean's List student every single semester, Dean's List. And, that experience and really delving deeper into my education, fully investing in it and doing everything you could possibly imagine, like studying abroad and being a resident assistant, being a student leader, being a summer orientation leader, just a variety of different experiences that kind of opened me up to what college students go through. I wanted to speak about that. I wanted to speak to high school students about that to kind of prepare them for what college was like. I wanted to speak to college students, younger college students. When I was a junior or senior at McDaniel, I would speak to our group of first year students and kind of lay out what this experience could be like for them and to let them know that they had control over their experience. So, I kind of had that going for me, and it turned into a professional thing around my junior year at McDaniel, where I started to kind of speak outside of the traditional classroom. I was speaking at education conferences. I was speaking at education technology companies. I was fortunate enough to deliver a TEDx talk about students finding purpose in their education, students being inspired by what they go through in their education. And that has kind of led me to a career in higher education. Like I said, my college experience was very transformative for me, and I felt like that's where I needed to be. Decided to pursue a master's degree at Georgetown University in learning, design, and technology, which is a program that I'm currently in part-time, but I'm fortunate enough to work for Georgetown University in a full-time role as well. So it's nice to have the overlap of working full-time at a university, but then also going to school part-time, and I'm going to school in the thing that I'm working on every single day, right? So I kind of get to try out and prototype and design and create and be able to see the work that's being developed in my courses take shape and really affect the experiences of Georgetown University students. And I could talk a little bit about that just briefly. Nelson and I were on an earlier call, and he was asking me whether I was a teacher at all in what I do. And I said, no, I'm not a teacher. I see that in my professional future, but that is not my current role. So my current role is at the Center for New Designs in Learning and Scholarship at Georgetown University. It's an acronym, we call it CANDLE, so CNDLS. And it's essentially our teaching and learning center. So institutions of higher education in the US, specifically the larger ones and the ones that are well-funded, have teaching and learning centers where faculty can go to for personal development. They can go to teaching and learning centers to help to receive help in building their courses and building their programs. And so I work directly with faculty members and professors at Georgetown University to improve their courses by making them inclusive for students, by making them accessible to students, and also to integrate topics of well-being into undergraduate courses, to integrate topics of racial and social justice into those courses. And then a very small part of my work is getting more Black and Brown students onto Georgetown's campus. And I've talked to people who believe that, or who have assumed that Georgetown University is a historically Black college because it's so close to Howard University, which is probably about 7-8 miles away in Washington, D.C. But it's actually the opposite. It's one of the most selective universities in the country, only accepting about 17% of its applicants. And most of those who enroll full time at Georgetown University are predominantly white and Asian. And a lot of them are also wealthy, right? It's very expensive to go to Georgetown. So really just trying to build programming resources, both financially and academic, so that more Black and Brown students, specifically from the DMV, can have an opportunity to enroll at Georgetown and kind of change the culture there, and then also graduate and earn their degree from there. So.
Yes, and that's fantastic work that you do. And I like the fact that you're trying to broaden your influence by getting a master's in the work that you do. I think it's very important. All of the work that you do is very important. I think that I honestly think that elementary school students, middle school students need more project coordinators, people like yourself, in the classroom on a day-to-day basis, helping them out with their learning, being in that environment with them. I think that role needs to be expanded. I don't think that it just applies to high school students or college students. I think that the elementary school students and middle schools need it just as much. So we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about, the family structures and about, our topic for this evening. So in terms of what it looks like to become a young adult, become a young man, and to really go throughout this journey, I know that, like everything, there are bumps in the road, there are obstacles, but I think that it's very important for people, for everyone to have people in their corner, especially to be their shoulder to cry on when they feel like falling, or when it gets to be overwhelming at times, or if we are in a very stressful place where we don't know how to move forward. I think that it's important for us to have great relationships with our friends and with our family. So my next couple of questions are much more family oriented, and it's more of a self-reflection. So why is it important for dads in particular and sons to establish a great relationship? And how do you interpret the distinction between boyhood and manhood? Because before you can pursue your professional career and before you are even in a position to understand what your place is in the world, you have to make that healthy transition, and you have to be mature enough to make those types of decisions. Why do you think those relationships are important between fathers and sons? And how do you interpret the distinction between boyhood and manhood before you even, before anyone is in the position to identify what they want to do for the rest of their lives? You have to be mature enough to make that decision and make wise choices. So, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, thank you for such brilliant questions. So I'll start by saying that I'm certainly not an expert in this matter, right? Nelson is much more of an expert on this topic than I am, but I'm somebody that has talked on it before. I'm somebody who thinks about it a lot, even in my position at Georgetown, where I'm working to integrate topics of well-being and mental health and kind of the things that students bring into the classroom, as you said, Nelson, from their familial relationships and from their experiences growing up. And as they're still developing into young adults that want to contribute to the world, all of these topics are really important. But I'll start by answering your first question, which is why the father-son relationship is so important today. And from my experience, I feel as though that relationship is important today because it teaches young men how to navigate a world and a society in which toxic masculinity is very prevalent, right? In a way that a woman figure for that individual might not be able to. And I want to also say that I commend the amazing work that single mothers do, right? Nelson, you fully are kind of in that, right? Like you fully support that as someone who's very close to their mother. Single mothers do an amazing job in filling that role, but I feel like it's just as important to have a male figure in the household, and I really feel like it unfolds in two ways, really. So the father can either be transformative for the son for recognizing that toxic masculinity is prevalent in our society and kind of teaching the son to not fall into that, right? Teaching the son to go about interacting with others and go about caring for themselves in a way that is antithetical to toxic masculinity, in a way that does not center the gender binary in their everyday experiences. So that's one thing, right? The father figure in that relationship can be important and helpful in helping the son navigate an environment in which toxic masculinity is prevalent. The other thing that I've seen is the father can be detrimental in the navigation of toxic masculinity. So the father can actually be the one that is imposing and perpetuating the ideals of toxic masculinity into their son. And then the son has to go through the process of unteaching in other areas, right? So it happens both ways. And obviously the latter is much more unfortunate. But when you have a male figure in the household in which the son respects, even fears in some sense, there's a lot of learning that happens. Whereas, say, if a son grows up with a single mother, they might have an older brother or older brothers. The same level of respect and fear might not be there in the way that it is for a male figure. So that's why I feel like the father-son relationship is extremely important today, especially with all of the conflicting messages that are being consumed by young men today via social media. And I feel like when we talk about mental health and mental well-being more generally, and how that can be complicated through social media consumption, a lot of that conversation is focused on young women, and we don't talk nearly enough about how young men are negatively affected by messages, standards, and expectations that are set, perpetuated, and shared through social media. So the father is extremely important in today's time, and kind of undoing that and teaching that.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks again for sharing that. And like you said, I was raised by a single mom, proud of it. And I think it's important for everyone to understand how important it is to establish, for dads and sons to establish a great relationship. And and I've told you this before, and I've shared it on my show several times, that I did not get that experience like I wanted to with my dad. But now I am in the position to do better, and to be better. So I understand what it looks like to dismantle those myths of what it means to be a man, or what it means to present myself as a man. Because I always say, and that's also one of my questions that I still have. I think that it's important for a man to establish a foundation and leave a legacy. I say that all the time, and even on my Father's Day special that I did back in June, I talked about how important it is for fathers to leave a legacy for their children and to establish a foundation. Because I think that you cannot set any expectations for your children that you can't live up to. So I think that it's important for fathers to establish that, because again, I think that you need for your children to build upon what you've already established. But if you have no foundation, and if you have no foundation established, and if you leave no legacy, the next generation has to rebuild that, and they have to figure it out on their own. And I think that legacy and that foundation, that is incorporated by everything, not just your strengths, but also your weaknesses, because every man has strengths and weaknesses. Every man has faults, and I think that is a part of who you are. So I think that when we talk about the relationships between dads and sons, I acknowledge the boys and the young men who did not grow up with that father figure in the household, but I also acknowledge the young men and boys who do. But I think that it's all the same in terms of what it looks like to really establish that foundation and to really put those pieces together in order to make something great. So I think that is important for everyone to understand. I think that it's important for dads to understand that it's important to leave a legacy and to build a foundation. If you can't build a foundation, and if you can't leave a legacy, you can't have any expectations for your children that you can't have for yourself. So I think that that's important. So my next question is the distinction between that transition between boyhood and manhood. For you and your personal experience, what made you when did that shift happen for you in your life, when you're like, okay, now I have to grow up, now I need to mature, now I need to do things differently? Like, when was that eureka moment for you as a young adult?
Wow, thank you for that, Nelson. And I have a question that I want to ask you about the foundation building, right? So I'm gonna put a pin in that, but remind me to ask you that question that I have for you. So, as far as transitioning from boyhood to manhood, I'll say that. So I'll talk about it generally, and I'll talk about what that kind of looked like for me. So I believe that the transition from boyhood to manhood happens when you become more selfless and you're willing to learn. So those are like the two main things that I see, right? So when you are still a boy, or when you're still in your early developmental stages and becoming a young man, you're very selfish, right? So you make decisions based on what makes you feel good. You make decisions based on how you're perceived by others, right? You make decisions based on what you believe is in your best interest. And this looks like a lot of things, right? I'm talking about how you treat your friends, what you decide to put into your body, right? How you decide to treat your parents. even down to what you wear and how you present yourself outwardly, right? All of these things are connected to how this makes you feel, and you want to feel as validated as possible. You want to feel as important as possible. You want to feel as powerful as possible. And we do things irrationally in order to feel that, in order to feel those emotions, right? So that all happens when you're in your boy stage. But when you become a man, you start to look around you and you start to realize that the world does not revolve around you, right? The world is a lot bigger than you are. And for me, that eureka moment, as you touched on, came in college, right? Probably right around the midpoint of my 4-year career in college, where I really started to look at how I was treating other people, specifically women, how I would treat the young women who were my classmates, who were my colleagues, who were my friends and individuals that I spent time with on campus, and started to be a lot more critical and vigilant of that. I feel like that realization came from a lot of different sources. So around that time is where I met Lauren, right, who I've been with, as I mentioned earlier, for 3.5 years. And it's been so, I would not be the person that I am today without her, obviously. And the beautiful relationship that we've cultivated together almost immediately upon meeting each other was transformative in the way that I treated, other women. And another thing too is when I started to seek mental health counseling at McDaniel College. So I would say the fall semester of my sophomore year, so around October, November of 2018, was a very challenging time for me, a time where I decided to quit playing organized college football, which I had never, I played football from age 10 to age 18, 19, right? So I didn't know what that looked like for me. I didn't know how to redefine myself. I didn't know how I associated myself once I disassociated myself from football. So really trying to learn that, and I really needed some counseling in order to figure that out and to figure out who I wanted to become, figure out how I wanted to comport myself. So those two things combined is really what helped me transform into a young man. And then other experiences that followed, right? Like studying abroad, being in a foreign country as a young adult, not being as familiar with the language, like just a really humbling experience being in a country where I am not the center of attention, right? Being in a country where I have to almost assimilate with how people get down over there, right? Like I don't have a car. I have to learn the public transportation. I have to learn the language. I have to learn just the cultural environment and get a feel for how people interact with each other. Like just being fully in a learning posture kind of helped me develop into a man. And again, kind of decentering myself from my own universe. And then also too, as I said, you have to be willing to learn. And what I find in today's society is that social media has made it to where once we take a stance on something, we can't take it back, or we can't change our minds about things. So I feel like our views on the pandemic and being vaccinated is a big example of this, right? So even say, for example, and I'm not going to use just somebody, right? Say if it's me, right? So say, for example, if I was an anti-vaxxer, which I'm not, I'm fully vaccinated and boosted. But say if I was an anti-vaxxer and I was an anti-vaxxer for the first 6 months of the pandemic. Like, this is way too early. I don't believe in this. There's not enough science behind it. And the more that I read, the more that I see death, the more that I see people go through this firsthand in my family, in my friendships, whatever it may be, I start to change my mind a little bit. I start to look more into it, and I actually change my mind. And I'm like, man, this might be a good idea, right? But I've spent the past 6 months on my social media on a weekly basis, some people even on a daily basis in some months, talking about how the vaccine it's not it, right? It's not something I want to do. And now I've changed my mind on it, and it's something that I want to do, but I've already built this brand about myself. Brands are so important today to where you can't grow, you can't develop, right? You can't change your mind. You have to have a stance, and you have to stick to that and be consistent with it. And I believe that is one of our greatest detriments today is that we learn in private. We'll change our mind in private, but we won't show that process of learning and developing in the public. And that's something that a man is up to doing. That is something that any decent, mature adult is willing to do, regardless of gender. But I think specifically for men, it's even harder because of toxic masculinity, because we have to display this power, because we have to display this level of intelligence and intellectual ability that we can't change. And I even think being willing to tell people that you're learning and that you don't know and that you still need to figure it out, and that, yeah, I thought that 3 months ago, but now I think this, or I have more questions about that. Taking that stance is more intelligent, is more intellectual, and I think it supports the notion that we still have a lot to learn. So those are the two things for me. When you transition from boyhood to manhood, there's a decentering of yourself from your own universe, right? Learning that your emotions almost come secondary to those around you, and there's boundaries for that, right? Like, you still need to care for yourself. You still need to know what your boundaries are, but at the same time, you interact with people every single day, right? And the way that you deal with your emotions and deal with your feelings is reflected upon that. It affects that. So that's one thing, and then the other thing is just being willing to learn and being able to share that process with others.
Yes, those were great examples, and I like your examples, and I like how you were able to explain that clearly, to the audience and to the listeners. I think that it's very important for well, I know for me, from my experience, I think that transition happened when I graduated from high school and when I started college. I think that I've learned a lot in the process. I think that one of the most important things I learned was how to create boundaries with people in college and once I graduated from high school, and how important it is to not only create boundaries, but to let people know what is and is not acceptable. So I think that if you love yourself enough and if you're mature enough, you are able to tell someone what they're doing or what they are saying is not appropriate, or is not appropriate. So I think that I've been able to let go of unhealthy relationships, but make room for new ones. Even in my therapy sessions now, I think that I've gotten over the hurdle of loving myself unconditionally, because self-esteem is something that I struggled with for such a long time. And I think that once I graduated from high school and once I entered into college, especially during my later years in college, I've been able to get past those youthful insecurities that I had about loving myself unconditionally and being so critical about everything that I do and with who I am, that I've been able to establish boundaries. So I've been able to let people know what is and is not acceptable. And I think that that's a form of self-love when you're able to do that. I think that it takes a mature person and a person who loves and cares about themselves to tell people when they're wrong, or when what they're doing or what they're saying is not acceptable. But now I think that my biggest challenge now is allowing myself to be loved by others because of the hurt that I've experienced from people in the past. So that's what I've been able to speak about in my therapy sessions, and that's what I'm working through now. So my first challenge was loving myself unconditionally, but now my challenge is accepting love from others and just being vulnerable enough to be okay with that and to be open with whatever happens, because the fear of hurt right now is ruling me. And that's why I haven't really pursued any type of romantic relationship with anybody. I've been cordial, I know how to make friends and I know how to be cordial with others, but in terms of just allowing myself to fall in love or to be loved by someone, that's something that I struggled with because of the past hurts. So that's something that that's one of the weaknesses I have now. So, and I'm very well in touch with that. And I think that I'm mature enough and honest enough to share that and to be open and transparent about that. So that's what I've learned throughout my years of college, and even once I graduated from high school and just making this transition. I can give one example, one brief example. I had shared with one of my relatives about the fact that I wanted to grow my family through adoption. I've shared that with you, and I've shared that with the listeners. I want a baby boy and a baby girl specifically, and I wanted to start that process in the next few years. I've been networking with people who have gone through the experience, attorneys, social workers, agencies. I've been really, really building my network, and I've been using the resources to my advantage. So I shared this with one of my relatives, and he didn't support it at all. And when you talked about, being very childish and just providing a response that a boy gives, in terms of being selfish, um, his response was like very self-centered. He, instead of saying, congratulations, I'm very happy for you, I support you 100%, I'll be there for you. Um, he gave a very, very childish and self-centered response and gave his opinions about what he thought, and it disappointed me. I wasn't surprised, I wasn't hurt, but I was much more disappointed because I felt like he and I were closer. Um, him and I should have been. He should have been in a position to support me because we had, or at least I thought, a healthy rapport where he could be supportive of me 100%. But since he gave a very, very selfish and childish response, I decided to let it go, and I said, okay. I told him how I felt, um, because I'm going through with this process by myself, and he had stated that he wasn't going to be supportive of me going through this process by myself without a spouse. And I told him that I can build a legacy and I can establish a foundation for my children and for my family without someone. If someone does not add value to my life, I'm not going to just subject myself to that just to make you happy or to make anybody else happy. This is for me, you know. And of course, me being raised by a single mom, a lot of people automatically assume that I don't have the tools I need to be successful, to be a husband or to be a father. And I tell people off all the time, so as soon as I hear that from someone, I'm quick to say, well, let me tell you about my mom. Let me tell you all the stuff she's done. So I will let you have it to the fullest. Um, if you come to me with that. That's what I said. I did that in a very, very tactful way, but I'm just using that as an example to just show how important it is to establish boundaries because, I don't want him to think that what he said was acceptable, because he wants to support me in me pursuing my master's program. He wants to support me as I continue to write my books and do my show and everything, but he doesn't want to support this dream. He doesn't want to support this dream because it doesn't fit his mold of what it looks like as something that should be celebrated. And I told him that if you're not going to celebrate all of, all everything that happens in my life and everything that I've been blessed with, I think it's important for you to just not celebrate any of it at all. You can't pick and choose what you want to celebrate and what you want to brag about. If because if you don't because if he doesn't agree with it, it's not about whether or not you would agree with it or not. It's about you being supportive and you being unselfish enough to put your personal feelings aside and think about what's best for your family. If you say you love your family and if you say you care, then your support means everything. So that's an example of what it looks like, I feel like, to establish boundaries and what it looks like when a man provides a childish and boyish and immature, response. So that's an example I wanted to use, to just bounce off of what you were saying. So that's what I wanted to share. And
Yeah, real quick before you move on, I just want to say first congratulations for your growth in the department of self-love, and then also being able to accept love from others. Like, most men don't discover that until their late 20s, 30s, late 30s, 40s, you know what I'm saying? So to experience that kind of revelation early on, it's just super powerful, right? And like I can even tell that from how you're speaking about your experiences, that you're very confident in, and how you love yourself, how you're taking care of yourself, and then also, like you said, how you're dealing with pushback from others. Yeah, like extremely selfish. We have to be able to overlook that. And there's a beautiful quote by I believe her name is Ijoma Ulowu, and she's a black author, and she says that and she says this quote within the context of racism, but it also applies to just controversial, not even necessarily controversial, but things that we might disagree with that other people do, is that whatever discomfort you feel with how somebody else is doing what they do, it'll never amount to the discomfort that that person feels having to deal with that, right? So whatever discomfort that your family member had about your plans for adopting a family, it'll never amount to the discomfort that you felt when he told you that, and like how you had to process that on the fly, like how you had to deal with that. So again, we can't be selfish, man. We have to be selfless, and we have to, as you said so beautifully, support each other through everything, really, and be willing to learn about each other's experiences, right? It's not just a matter of saying, "Oh, that's great, congratulations," and move on. You know, you want to, if you have more questions about it, or if you are hesitant about it, ask and learn more. Again, being in that learning posture, and maybe if he knew more about the process, or maybe if he wanted to know about your motivations for doing it, he wouldn't have such a strong stance on it if he knew more information. So being open to that kind of conversation as well is also important.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks again. I appreciate you for sharing everything that you just shared. My next question, I know that you had wanted to ask me something earlier in the show. You put a pin in something. You said you wanted to ask me about something.
Because we were coming up on the conversation about foundation building,
Yes.
and how it's important for us as young men to build foundations. What is your definition of a strong foundation? Like, where does that start at for you? You know,
I think that your foundation just begins with who you are, who you are, and how you identify yourself. I think that who you are, that doesn't just include like how you identify yourself, but I think it's all about what you value. I think that everything that you value is a part of your foundation. I think that everything that you represent, everything that you stand for, what you invest your time and energy into, how you give back to others, how you support others, how you encourage and uplift others. I think that all of that is a part of your foundation. And when we talk about the type of legacy you build, I think that that's all about how you want to be remembered, how you want people to remember you. I think that that's what it looks like when you try to build a legacy, how you want to be remembered, and how do you want people to, whether or not you want people to admire you and have fantastic things to say about you and what you've done and the impact that you've made. But I think that when you talk about the foundation, I think that it's all about what you value. It's all about what your expectations are for yourself. It's all about your standards, your goals, your dreams. I think all of that is a part of your foundation, the good and the bad, your strengths and your weaknesses. I think all of that establishes your foundation. So I hope that answers your question.
That does answer my question. That's beautiful, and that's what I was hoping you would answer with, because I think a lot of times when, as young men, we're faced with this question about foundation and legacy building, the conversation is usually financial, right? Like building a foundation. Like, I feel like foundation building is much less about the businesses that you build. It's much less about the physical body that you build, right? It's much less about the wealth that you build. We have this fascination and obsession with intergenerational wealth. And there's an importance to being financially stable. There's an importance to financial literacy, but this never-ending pursuit to build capital, something that's very Western, capitalistic, and also selfish too, right? Like I heard someone on a podcast, PJ Morton. Not sure whether you're familiar with his music. He's like a Grammy Award-winning songwriter and musician, and he was talking about how his long journey of success. He's an older gentleman. 40 isn't old, but in the music industry, it can be seen as old. But he was saying that coming up as a young musician, he wanted the perception of success, but not actual success. Like, he wanted people to see him as successful, but he didn't know what success even meant for him. Like, he wanted people to see him as like the industry example of success, but didn't know what success looked like for him. And I think for most people, if you were to really dig deep, if you were to really have like several sessions and conversations and just asking the right questions for people, people's definition of success would be personal fulfillment, would be goal setting, would be emotional intelligence, understanding their own emotions and how they feel, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what makes them confused, things of that nature. Like building a foundation and a legacy through that is much more important than any financial, materialistic foundation that you build for your heirs.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to wrap up the show. My last question is my last two questions are, where do you see yourself 5 to 10 years from now? And if you had any last words for the listeners in terms of how they can reach out to you and find you if they have more questions about the work that you do, or if they want you to speak at their engagement.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So 5 years from now and 10 years from now, both of those are different. It's like 5 years is a long time, but it's also not a long time. And 10 years is a long time, but it's also not a long time, if you know what I'm saying. So 5 years from now, well, I'll stick within the range, right? I'll stick within the range. So 5 to 10 years from now, I see myself, I feel like, in 3 different positions. So I see myself married within that 5 to 10 years, somewhere around there, right? To my longtime girlfriend, Lauren. Hey, loves, if you're watching. So I see myself married. I see myself teaching in some capacity, right? So whether it's teaching in a formal classroom, whether it's teaching faculty and teaching other educators how to do what they do, whether it's teaching through continuing the public speaking that I do, I feel like that is also a form of teaching. I see myself continuing to teach and educate and inspire others. And I feel like my connection and my draw to higher ed will ultimately lead me to some sort of formal teaching position. I don't know whether that comes in 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years, but I do see myself teaching 5 to 10 years from now. And then lastly, I just see myself happy and less restless. I'm very restless right now, and I'm happy. I am happy. I'm in a happy relationship. I like the work that I do. I really enjoy the work that I do. I see that it's meaningful. I love my living situation right now, but I'm also restless, right? I'm also somebody who is an overachiever and is actively trying to not be an overachiever every second of my life. And that's hard. That's really hard. It's hard because I achieved so much at McDaniel, and I hold myself to that standard now as a master's degree student. You see this gnat fly across the screen. So sorry. But yeah, so I see myself being less restless. Like I feel like in 5 to 10 years, I'll be living with my significant other. I have my life a little more planned out. Hopefully I'll be a little bit more settled into my career. Like I just started my full-time position, 2.5 months ago, right? So I'm still settling into that, still trying to understand all that my work entails. And there's also really big problems in the world that I want to help solve. And I saw somebody post on their Instagram story recently about what their dream job would be. I don't believe in the idea of a dream job. I believe in the fact that there will always be problems that need to be solved. And I do not have to sentence my life to solving one problem for the rest of my life. And I feel as though at any given point, I could be trying to solve 10 problems at once. I can be working on trying to solve one problem for several years. That's kind of this idea that your career, you have to know exactly what you want to do 5 to 10 years from now. You have to know exactly what you're going to do for your long-term career. I feel like it's kind of a myth, and it puts people in a box. And we talk about my speaking journey. I've spoken about racial and social justice within the higher education system. I've spoken about personal and professional development for young adolescents, specifically high school students. I've spoken to audiences ranging from middle school students for the TED Talk that I did to just last week I spoke at the DC jail as a part of Georgetown's prison and justice program to deliver a public speaking workshop and kind of develop communications skills for those who are incarcerated. So I'm forever always going to expand as I learn more. And it's back to my point that I made earlier about being willing to learn. So I speak about a variety of things. Like I said, I speak about social justice and how to undo systems of racism. I have a specialty in that in the education space, but I'm more than willing to talk about it in other spaces too. I talk about communication strategy. I talk about public speaking. I will teach you how to be a better public speaker and presenter and educator. And I also speak about professional development. All right. So if any of those topics are things that you're involved in, are things that you're actively working toward, if you have a group that works on any of those three things, then I might be the person for you. You can feel free to reach out at www.jdspeaks. Do I even need to say that anymore? I feel like that's an old thing, right? The WW thing. All right, I need to stop saying that. So if you just go to jdspeaks.com, you'll find some of my content. You'll find where to book me. You can also follow me on Instagram at jdspeaks. JD on Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to talk in the chat. And you can invite me on your podcast, just like Nelson was gracious and kind enough to do for me. So.
Yes, thanks again for appearing on my show and talking about your experience for the second time. I'm going to let you go and I'll close out the show, but thanks again for your time. We all appreciate it, and this was a really, really, really great discussion.
Thanks so much, Nelson. You take care.
And you too.
Thanks.
So that wraps up another edition of the show. This is the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. I'm your host, Nelson E. Brown. Feel free to follow us on Facebook at Awesome God Radio and also on Twitter at Awesome God Radio. You can also follow us on Instagram at Awesome God Radio. You can follow me and reach out to me directly via Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at Nelson E. Brown and at Nelson Brown. I'll be more than happy to respond. I hope you guys had a chance to enjoy this awesome discussion that we've had for the second time, and you all are free to go back and look at the previous show and listen to that, and also share this with your family members and friends. So next week on the show, we're having Miss Ashley Esposito. She has secured the slot for the Baltimore City Board of Education during the primary election. She won the primary. She was one of the candidates who won the primary election for the Baltimore City School Board this year, this summer. So she is going to be on our show next week talking about that experience and why she chose to run. And we're going to learn much more about her story. I've been working with her for a while now, for the past couple of months, and I think that she's a phenomenal young lady. I think that she has a lot of great things to share and offer the board for the city of Baltimore and the students who go to school in the city of Baltimore. So she's been working closely with Miss Salima Jasani, who also secured a slot in the primary and who will be joining her in the general election. So they're running together. So they have been able to put together great campaigns. So I'm looking forward to speaking with her. So again, I hope you all enjoy your evening. I thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm blessed that you took the time to listen to what Jordan and I had to share. So we'll see you all next week. So make an appointment to meet me back here on Tuesday, August 9th, 2022 from 6 to 7 p.m. so that we can speak to Miss Ashley Esposito about her experience and about her story and why she chose to run for the city school board for the community and what is next for her and Miss Salima after the primary and as they head toward the general election in November. So take care. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week.